Greetings, everybody. So, sorry about my audio. A couple videos ago, got some interesting replies or interesting response to my last video about the existence of God. There was one guy, actually, I think it's a girl, believe it or not, which sounds like a guy, but it's a girl, um, who's very upset, which I predicted. There's always someone who gets, and she is atheist, which um, they get very upset oftentimes. I'm not sure exactly why, but yeah, they don't. Um, for some reason, a lot of atheists are very angry people, very snide comment. Kind of, yeah. What? Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your thoughts. I'm gonna go through and respond to some of this stuff. Druden Fush. I don't know how to pronounce that. Drudenfuzz. So, all one word. So the first part says, well, Judaism acknowledges in some versions other deities. Many forms of Christianity have the Trinity, which is technically thus also polytheism. And if that is not polytheism, then versions of Hinduism, yeah. So there is one version of Hinduism that I'm aware of that some people consider to be monotheistic, but I don't include it. I mean, if you want, we can say there's four. There's four monotheistic religions, but it still makes it so 99% of all religions are pantheism or polytheism. So that point still stands. But yes, there is that version of Hinduism that I left out there. But I leave it out because it's not. I mean, we won't go down that road. But so yes, Christians believe in the Trinity. The Trinity is not polytheism. And remember when I said in the last video, remember how I said that I can guarantee you that most of the arguments you bring up will be actually long debunked arguments, and arguments that I will expect to get because they're all. If you could write down a list of 10 of the most common arguments atheists will use, like 90% of the arguments that you will get will be on that list. So it's really that predictable. I don't mean that to sound like arrogant or anything. I just really think there is a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of atheist forums, atheist websites where there's a lot of long debunked arguments that have been dealt with. Sometimes some of the arguments have been dealt with over a century ago, and they're still used. So anyway, so yeah, I got off on a tangent. Sorry about that, but the Trinity is not polytheism. The Trinity, the Christian belief in a Trinity, is one God, three separate persons. So, and that is not logically incoherent. Like, for example, the space, time, and matter all exist as a continuum. Three separate entities within one. So that is not logically incoherent at all. But yeah, the Christian belief is in one God, monotheism, three separate persons. And if that is difficult to get your mind around, the human brain has a hard time. If the things the human brain can't comprehend are not logically incoherent. Because like I said in the last video, it actually is logical that there would be things about God. If he's beyond our capacity, if he's beyond the universe, it would make logical sense. There would be things about him we can't understand that our 3-pound brain just can't wrap our head around. So, Goes on to say that therefore my classifications of religions is flawed, etc., etc. So I debunked that first paragraph. Let's see, next one. Big Bang narrative is also flawed and shows that you have not actually looked into astrophysics. See, how do you know that? I noticed a lot of atheists, usually the temperamental ones like this, will make assumptions like that. You don't know. You don't know my education. There is more than one Big Bang model. I'm very aware of that. Since the Big Bang only talks about the initial expansion of the universe, not what caused it, and causation is only interesting within space-time. And I think you meant to use a different word there. I think you meant to say causation is only exists within space-time, thus cannot be applied to anything before space-time was a thing. This is actually the temporal. Some atheists will argue that you need time for cause and effect to be a relationship, or causality has a temporal relationship with time, or temporal. And actually, that is not true. Cause and effects you don't have to have time exist for something to have a cause and effect. So yeah, that's also very easy to debunk. Which means to ask for a cause of the universe is just silly, and thus no need to add any deities there as some explanation. And no, there are Big Bang models that assume the singularity to be older than space-time, but personally I prefer a borderless universe model. There are other models, mainly theoretical physicists will work on this kind of stuff. They have proposed other models to the beginning of the universe. But every single one of them really just confounds the problem. What it does is creates an infinite number. Basically, this caused this caused that, this caused this, and it creates this infinite regression all the way back into the beginning of time, or into the beginning. So basically, it just keeps adding more and more causes. There has to be an original first cause. And by the way, the law of causality doesn't say that everything needs a cause. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. That's how that law works. So it's not that everything has a cause. Everything that begins to exist, every finite thing has a cause. The universe is a finite thing. So where was I? Big Bang models. Yeah, there has to be the original unmoved mover. So no matter how far back you go, no matter how many explanations you come up with, there has to still be that first cause. Goes on to say that people agree on the existence of Jesus is an argument ad populum and means nothing. What he means by that, ad populum, means an argument from majority opinion. And it's funny because I'm usually the one telling other people majority opinion means nothing to me, which is true. But here we're talking about experts. I didn't say majority opinion. I said expert opinion, which is really what you're arguing when you're talking about science, history, anything. You're talking about scientific experts and the consensus. So all of your arguments just now about the Big Bang, we're using the same type of argument I'm using for when I say that 95% of all historians, and that includes secular historians, so non-religious ones, people who don't believe in Christianity, agree that Jesus existed. No, actually, we have very little evidence for Jesus, so little, in fact, that the mysticism position is not completely invalid. That is 100% false, and that out of all the arguments some atheists use, most of them will not try that one, or at least the most sophisticated ones, because we have an overwhelming amount of evidence for the existence of Jesus. It's actually just something that is bizarre, that is still around as a thing, that people actually try to argue. We have more evidence than any person from that time period. More evidence than we have for Caesar. More evidence than we have for Homer. We have Homer's Iliad, right? The first manuscript we have after the existence of Homer is 600 to 800 years after the existence of Homer, but we never question his existence. Everyone agrees that Homer existed and wrote the Iliad. We have manuscripts within 100 years of Jesus, and 24,000 of them, more than any other manuscript in history, and people say, oh, it didn't exist. It's just, even guys like Richard Dawkins will admit that Jesus existed. It's just not something that is true at all. It's just bizarre how many atheists, internet atheists mainly, will try to argue that. It's just completely false. He says, and of course, a historical figure that gets legends built around it doesn't mean that this figure was actually a demigod or otherwise divine. So you accuse me of using straw man arguments against atheists. You're using a straw man here, because that's not what Christians believe. Christians don't believe in Jesus as divine because he had legends built around him, and they weren't legends, by the way. These are eyewitness accounts of the events of his life and the things he said. Attested to, let's see. But if a historical person and text close to that historic person is so important to you, then I guess you should better go with Islam. They have a much stronger case in these regards. That is 100% false too. That is pretty easy. I don't want to offend anyone of different religions, but I will give you my quick take on this. All the ancient historians say Jesus died on the cross. The ancient Greek historians say he died on the cross. The ancient Roman historians say he died on the cross. The ancient Jewish historians say he died on the cross. So forth. They all say the same thing. Then 600 years later, after the existence of Jesus, Muhammad comes along and says he didn't die on the cross. So, I mean, that's pretty, right there is pretty, there's more arguments too, but I mean, that kind of, it's just weird to me that you said there's a stronger case for Islam. That doesn't make any sense. As an aside, man, you're quite full of yourself. I'd like you to give some examples of how I'm full of myself. If being confident that I'm right, in all humility, I say I am right. So, I say that in all humility, I am right. So no, I don't think I'm full of myself. You actually sound quite full of yourself. But keep your beliefs. I don't mind. If it makes you happy, then who am I to tell you to try reality for a change? So a lot of atheists like this, angry ones like this, usually will throw in something like that, some kind of insult. That's an insult. I mean, he's basically saying that I'm living in a fantasy world when I'm the only one who has any arguments. I mean, I'm the only one who has true arguments. I just debunked all of his, therefore his are false. You're more than welcome to continue this debate. I actually enjoy it, so sorry if I come off full of myself. I don't mean to. I have been told that I can come off that way, but I really don't. I don't think I am full of myself. I do actually enjoy the debate, so feel free to respond. I still think I'm right, so I don't think that makes me full of myself. Anyway, so I got some other comments on here too. That's some interesting stuff. Peter Dentist says, nothing like some fresh brewed TI in the morning. I like that. I like that comment. This person says, wrong, wrong, wrong. You have a lot to learn, sonny boy. Haha. So most atheists would either argue like this last guy did, or actually I think it's a girl. So sorry if I've been calling you guy this whole time. It's usually guys, so it's not because I'm sexist or anything. It's just usually guys, male atheists, that argue with me. So either that, or they'll just say something like that, kind of, looking down on you type of thing. They tend to look down on you. This person says, I thought you would have had the opposite views being an INTP, but you proved me wrong. That is actually a common misconception. A lot of people think that most INTPs are atheists, but actually, the there have been studies on this. It's still the majority of INTPs that believe in God. It's just a lower. It's still a lower amount. So if the average population, if the general population, 79% of people believe in God, it's like 69% for INTPs. But it's still a majority. It's just less. I take a Socratic approach to religion because I know enough to know that I know nothing. I love hearing a person with facts advocate for instead of against religion, though. Very interesting. Well, thank you very much. Black Fence Cat. Good to hear from you. I haven't heard from you in a while. You did comment on my last video too, but before that I haven't heard from you in a while. Basically, you were saying you're clearly a very intelligent guy by the way you write. But I would, if it were me, I would simplify a lot of the sentences that you write. Basically, I think what you're trying to ask is, how do we know what to believe from the Bible? Like, ministers have their own interpretations, so we believe the minister's interpretation or that pastor's interpretation. How do we determine? A lot of the time what you'll get from people is there's so many different translations of the Bible. How do we know which one is right? How do we know any of it's even true? There's so many different translations. But when you look at these different translations, you put them all together, and not one basic teaching is altered. So God promised to preserve his word, and the Bible says he would preserve his word. And it looks like a kept promise to me, because we still have it. It's still the most popular book in the world, the Bible, after all this time. And no major teaching is altered. This person says, the Bible is a book full of history and prophecies. However, people hate the truth, yet throughout the ages, none of the lies have been able to absolutely bury the truth. True. Kind of like what I was just saying. It's like the culture nowadays want to talk about the truth of Thanksgiving and the Native Americans or whatever other topics that doesn't suit the collective majority narrative. Very true. So yeah, I realize this is kind of a channel killer, starting to talk about this kind of stuff, but I don't really care. Just telling it like it is, guys. Telling my beliefs, and I don't try to force it on anyone. So I enjoy the debates. Even any kind of questions or arguments you guys have, feel free. I actually enjoy responding to them. So no hard feelings to the atheist that looks down on me. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys.